Hello, everyone, and welcome to our UNB Talks online series presented by UNB Associated Alumni. My name is Michelle McNeil. I'm the Executive Director of the UNB Associated Alumni, and it is my great pleasure to be spending the next hour with all of you today. Throughout today's session, I encourage you to use the chat function in Zoom to connect with one another and also to share any reactions you might have to the content. If you have any questions that you want our expert today to answer, then you can submit those in the Q&A function within Zoom, and I'll be monitoring that and be able to ask those questions at the end of the presentation. So today's session is centered around family caregivers and how you can care for yourself so that you can care for others. Our expert today is Karen Lake. Karen earned her Bachelor of Nursing from UNB in 1989. Karen proudly works as a professional caregiving consultant and care navigator. She was called to offer this service to families after working as a registered nurse in home health care for 25 years. Karen has a special passion for supporting, guiding, and directing family members to be the best they can be in their caregiving role, to help them make informed choices, to be prepared, and to confidently navigate the complex issues that come with caring for a loved one. She has seen the emotional struggles that family members face as they attempt to balance caregiving with the other demands of life, such as children, careers, retirement, and illness. And so, Karen has made it her mission to serve and support family members of aging loved ones in the Fredericton area and beyond. Gathering her years of experience and expertise, she has carefully crafted comprehensive programs that are tailored to meet each family's specific needs. When not supporting her clients, Karen collaborates on other projects, such as the first ever Death Expo in Atlanta, Canada, a family caregiver wellness retreat, family caregiver wellness expos, and has more recently ventured into the world of research, working on several projects that support family caregivers. Karen is a proud nurse, wife, and mom to two young men, as well as her walking companion dog, Tess, and she lives here in Fredericton, New Brunswick. Welcome, Karen.
Hello. Should I go ahead and share my presentation, Michelle?
Yes, that would be great to do that. Yeah, thanks, Karen.
Just give me one moment. There we go. Hopefully everyone can see that okay.
Yeah, it looks great. Thanks, Karen.
Awesome. So thank you, Michelle, and UNB alumni, my alumni, for having me speak about how we can care for ourselves as we care for others. I am Karen Lake, and I am a proud UNB grad, registered nurse, caregiving consultant, and care navigator. I work independently in my practice here in Fredericton, New Brunswick, and I get to assist people to navigate the complex issues of caring for a family member. I help them to feel more confident and capable of being a caregiver to their family member, even when they're feeling overwhelmed, exhausted, and ready to give up. I'll tell you more later how I do that. But first, would it be okay if I told you a little bit about myself so that you have a greater understanding of who I am and why I do what I do? I'm going to assume that you're all saying yes. I feel incredibly blessed to be supporting Fredericton and area families. I get to meet the most wonderful people as I grow and develop my practice, forging new relationships and discovering new opportunities. I get to provide guidance and assistance to many families, locally and beyond, and work in a field that I love, using all of the knowledge, experience, and information that I've gathered in over my 30 years as a practicing nurse. I'm pioneering in a field of care navigation, which is exciting and a little scary at the same time, I will admit. I'm doing what I love in my own practice, making an impact, and surrounded by a wonderful network of family, friends, business colleagues, and clients at a pace that feels good in my head and in my heart. You may hear my dog that Michelle introduced. The mailman just came, but he's gone. Yeah, so working at a pace that's good for my head and my heart. But things weren't always so positive, and it didn't always look this way. About 10 years ago, when I was an employee for a large company, I began to feel very overwhelmed in my job. I was spinning in circles, not getting a lot done, and feeling very frustrated. I didn't feel excited to go to work. I was disengaged, feeling tired, exhausted, feeling very alone, irritable, and resentful of everyone around me. I had become a really bad and sad employee. And I tried to do my best, even though I wasn't happy. But what I didn't know was that I was burned out. And I do believe it had been simmering for a while, years in fact, but I didn't recognize it. And even though I was frustrated and overwhelmed, quitting was not an option. And then one day, now 8 years ago, I'll never forget, I walked in and a supervisor told me that I was fired. Wow, I was in shock, disbelief, I was stunned, I was humiliated, I was embarrassed, I was ashamed, and had to ask myself, now what do I do? I really had to take the time to process what happened, to come to terms with my feelings, to accept my feelings, and to learn how to take care of myself and to reach out and receive help in order to heal. And so I began to make a plan for my future. And as I did the work that it takes to recover from burnout, I soon realized that I had actually been given a gift. It was an opportunity to do more, to do what I wanted to do on my terms with who I chose to do it with, to create something new, to do more, to serve more, and to use all of my skills, experience, and expertise. And so, on the 1-year anniversary of my dismissal, I launched my own practice, and I'm a nurse, entrepreneur, working at something I love and at a pace that I enjoy. I now love going to work, and my passion is to help people to avoid burning out, to survive and to thrive, to nourish and to flourish as a caregiver. And this has become my life's work. I believe that all roads, although some difficult, have led me to this place. And I'll just share a little fun photo. This is my grad picture, obviously on the left. That was a lot of years ago, back in the 80s, and fast forward to today. So I just thought I'd share that. So enough about me. Let's talk about why you're all tuning in today. And first off, how about we talk about being a caregiver? Am I a caregiver? Maybe you're asking yourselves that. I was a caregiver in a little different capacity, but as a nurse, manager, I was caregiving for an organization as well as my family. But many people don't identify as a caregiver. But I will tell you that you are far from alone. Recent stats say there's probably about 8 million informal or family caregivers in Canada. So you're far from alone. Some family caregivers can provide 30 plus hours a week of support to their person. 75%, or about 6 million, are caring for an older adult. 39% are caring for an aging parent, and about 8% are caring for a spouse. If you can believe it, 70% of the care in our communities is provided by family caregivers, and only 30% happens in institutions like hospitals and nursing homes. That's a huge amount of care that's happening in our community. No surprise that 54% of family caregivers are women, usually between the ages of 45 and 64, and they're often still supporting children at home and an aging parent. These numbers, I think, are a little on the low side because a lot of these stats are from the Canadian Association of Retired Persons, and they're more from the range of 2017, 2018. So fast forward with our aging population, I suspect these numbers are pretty modest. Our health system, our care systems rely on people to care and support their family members. We need to support you in your work since you are contributing, get this, $24 to $31 billion per year to the healthcare system. I don't say you're saving it, I'm saying that you're contributing $24 to $31 billion per year to the healthcare system. There's a lot of care happening in our communities. The thing with caregiving is that the intensity of it tends to increase as the health of your person decreases. And it often starts with really minimal support. It might be just bringing a meal to mom and dad. It might just be picking up a prescription at the pharmacy. And then it kind of quietly increases to include more things. And if you are doing these small tasks, you are a caregiver. So you might want to ask yourself that, am I a caregiver? There really is a lack of preparation and training. There is no tell-all book that tells you A to Z how to be a caregiver. It really is often thrust onto you when a loved one, a family member becomes suddenly ill or diagnosed unexpectedly. It's not a role that you can just give up, but it's also a role you probably didn't choose or ask for. It can often lead to financial losses. Some people have even lost their job or had to take leave of absence because of their responsibilities. One statistic said that over 1.6 million family caregivers had to take a leave from their work. The decline in your physical, emotional, mental health is real. It can be really taxing physically, emotionally, mentally, and financially. Because the work is often unrelenting. It's hard, and it requires tremendous sacrifice, tremendous patience, and there are times when you want to quit. There is a lack of federal, provincial benefits. There's not much flexibility in workplaces for absences or working hours, leaving you to take on a lot of responsibility. There is a lack of awareness of resources and limited resources in a system that is challenging to navigate to begin with. Giving up and moving on is productive in some situations, but in the case of caregiving, we either can't give up or we don't want to give up. We just need to find some way for the overwhelm, exhaustion, fear that can lead into burning out to ease up. I hope I'm right on this. And those of you that are listening in who are in this role, perhaps this is hitting close to home. So I'm going to share some strategies and tips, those that have worked for me and that I share with all of my clients today to avoid or to overcome burnout. And sometimes I call them sustainability strategies, just because that's really what it takes in order for you to keep on doing this job. So we're going to go a little deeper than manicures and pedicures and chocolate. Those are all great, but we're going to go a little deeper than that. So you were in the right place at the right time. I just have a quick definition here of burnout. Burnout being exhaustion of physical or emotional strength or motivation, usually as a result of prolonged stress or frustration. It might result when a person has given physically, emotionally, and maybe even financially over a period of time without adequate support to replenish or rejuvenate oneself. We often hear about burnout in the workplace. Second to employees, caregivers experience burnout, those who devote themselves to the unpaid care of others. And many of us are a combination of both. I know I was. So there's a little example that I sometimes give that might make this easier to understand. So I'm going to just hold up my water mug that's always close by. I always have a water jug with me, and I'm just going to hold on to it. And normally, if I was in a room full of people, people would shout out an answer when I ask, "How heavy is this glass of water?" But I realized that we're not necessarily in front of each other. You can pop your answer in the chat, I suppose, and Michelle will see it. But I usually just ask, how heavy is this glass of water? And sometimes people will shout out, oh, it's 2 cups, or oh, it's 8 ounces, or something like that. And then after we've heard a few answers, I usually say, the weight doesn't matter. What matters is how long I hold it. I could sit here and hold it for a minute, probably not a problem. I could hold it for an hour, and I probably would start to get an ache in my arm. If I sat here all day and held it, my arm would probably be numb and paralyzed. The weight has not changed, but the longer I hold it, the heavier it becomes. Caregiving stress and worry are like this glass of water. Think about your worries for a minute, not a big deal. Think about them for an hour, that kind of hurts. Think about them all day, every day, and you'll feel numb, paralyzed, and incapable of doing anything. What we need to learn is how to put the glass down. Because caregiving demands are heavy, it can be really scary, it can be really lonely, it can be really unpredictable, because this is not a road that everyone has experienced, have traveled, or understands. Burnout is often denied or unrecognized and undetected because it can sneak up on you amongst the daily demands as you attempt to balance your career, your kids, your community commitments with the precarious health of your family member, dealing with medications and meals and appointments and just life. Or burnout can really literally hit like a ton of bricks. It can feel like lack of energy, overwhelming fatigue, sleep issues, anxiety, high blood pressure, ulcers, physical aches, pains, issues with your gut, infections, worse. It's like, yuck. It doesn't sound nice at all, does it? So why is this self-care stuff so important? I believe that your ability to care for yourself is a direct reflection of your ability to care for others. I'll just let that sit for a moment. And I just want to say that it is okay to honor yourself first and to take time to rest, relax, recharge, and reflect. Sometimes we need permission. It is okay to honor yourself first. You've all heard the phrase, you've got to take care of yourself. You can't give from an empty cup. The thing is that no one ever says how to take care of yourself. how to fill your cup. When others insist, it can actually make you feel bad, makes you feel like you're not doing something else or that you have to add it to your to-do list. I think I'm right on this. You can say that you have no time, that you've got other things to do, but there are things that you can do, and it doesn't have to take a lot of time. Quick things, things that can take no more than a few seconds, things that can easily incorporate into your life, things that will make you feel better. I'm here to tell you that there are things you can do to feel better. Easy things that help you to relax, to reconnect, and to rejuvenate. You have permission to nourish yourself so that you can flourish as a caregiver. But we really need to train our brain to create these healthier habits. This is a whole mindset shift. I've put in these next two slides 10 really easy self-care tips, and I'm going to touch on each one of them fairly quickly. Again, self-care tips or sustainability strategies, whatever you want to call it, so that you're nourished, so that you can flourish and show up as a caregiver. The first one is deep breathing. Deep breathing is your best friend as a caregiver. It's easy and it's free, and you can do it anywhere. One of the deep breathing strategies that has really worked for me, because sometimes I still wake up when responsibilities are heavy, and I'll wake up in the middle of the night and I want to fall back to sleep, right? We all are just craving that sleep. And it's called tactical breathing or box breathing. And if you want, I can do a quick little demo of box breathing. So box breathing is basically emptying your lungs and then breathing in on the count of 4, holding it for 4, exhaling it on the count of 4, and holding for the count of 4, and repeat. And if counting to 4 is too cumbersome for your brain, just do whatever feels good in your body. It could be maybe a count of 3, or maybe it's deeper than that. But you can do deep breathing in the car, when you're at a traffic light, when you wake up in the middle of the night, or at your desk at work. Deep breathing is free and easy, and it's always there for you. Deep breathing calms your nervous system. And when you're anxious about things with the person you're caring for, we need to calm our nervous system so we can think clearly. Number 2 is water. Pretty simple, kind of free. I mean, we do have to pay for water, but relatively inexpensive. Hydration just increases your energy level. It helps to transport nutrients. Your medications are absorbed better with more water content. It transports oxygen through your body. It helps build muscle, and it boosts your immunity. Water. Number 3 is movement. Your body was made to move. I know just before I hopped on to this call, I was probably feeling a little anxious and nervous just coming on to do the presentation, and I really felt the need to move. So I just went out and did some of the arm stretches that I'm supposed to do for my shoulders, and it really helped. Time outside in nature is medicinal. I believe that it truly is. Just get out and move your body, swing your arms. We know walking is known to decrease stress. Time outside is wonderful. And if you can't get very far because of your commitments at home, just step out even onto your deck. Put your face in the sunshine on a day like today and just do that deep breathing that we talked about. I have number 4 listed as journaling. I really feel like it's beneficial to get things out of your head. especially before bed. Maybe you need to write down what your thoughts, your feelings, your fears are, what you want to get accomplished tomorrow, what you accomplished today, what was good about the day. It's really good to get all of that stuff out of your head. Number 5 is knowledge. I really encourage all caregivers and my clients to never stop learning about the disease, learning about life, learning about yourself, learning about the person that you take care of. Ask questions, demand answers. Everybody who's a caregiver knows that advocating and knowing your stuff and sharing your stuff and pushing forward with what your person needs with different health professionals is super huge. So knowledge is power when you're a caregiver. I've got 5 more, so bear with me. Number 6 is a big one because for anyone who knows anything about caring and supporting someone, it's jam-packed with thoughts, feelings, and emotions. It's emotionally charged. These are our closest relationships, usually the people that we're supporting and caring for. So it's really emotionally packed. We really have to be able to acknowledge and accept what it is we're feeling. It's okay to laugh. It's okay to cry. It's okay to love yourself and be kind to yourself and recognize that the work that you do is important. It's essential. About being positive, being present, and that mindset that we talked about. Reading to improve yourself as a person and practicing gratitude are all known to support you as a caregiver. Number 7 goes without saying, it's okay to have fun. When you're a caregiver, you often have to plan a little bit more carefully if you want to have a fun activity. And that's okay. You just need to plan, you need to set the date, you need to set things up so that you can step out of your responsibilities for a few moments and just have fun and be present in those joyous moments with whatever activity you would consider to be fun. But know that it's okay to laugh. Laughter is actually medicinal too, and it's free. Medicine doesn't have to come in a bottle. So have fun and laugh and let those endorphins flow, because that's actually what increases your feeling of well-being. Number 8 is setting boundaries. And we know you don't have to be a caregiver to find this challenging. I always say it's okay to say no. So I would encourage you right now to say that out loud at your desk or wherever you're watching. It's okay to say no. Sometimes we have to, right? Your responsibilities may be such that you can't commit to a certain date, event, or community obligation. That may be, something that comes around again and you can participate at another time. But you can't do everything and you don't have to do everything. And you don't have to lie about it either. You don't have to make up things or say you're sorry because you can't attend something. You just have to say, no, thank you, and not question that. Time really is our most precious asset, isn't it? So you need to find strategies to save yourself time and energy. And sometimes that means saying no. Number 9 kind of goes without saying when we're talking about self-care, but it's really to kind of change the focus. Instead of taking care of someone else, taking care of you and your health checkups and your medications and the things that you enjoy. It's about taking care of what you're eating, your sleep, about moving your body, as we mentioned, treating yourself to what brings you joy. And this is kind of where the chocolates and the bubble baths and the spa days come in. Take care of yourself. And number 10 is stay connected. The thing that happens sometimes with caregivers is that they get so focused on their responsibilities along with everything else in life, that they kind of tune people out. And it's kind of that old saying where we say sometimes incorrectly that I'm just going to do it myself. It's just easier to do it myself, and I know it gets done. But when people don't know what you're experiencing, it's really hard for them to step in. So with those trusted people closest to you, stay connected to them. Stay connected with those meaningful relationships so that you're not isolated and so you don't feel so alone and lonely. Those who know your situation can more easily step in when they know where you're at and what you're going through and what is needed at that time. I do believe people want to help. They just don't always know what to do. So ask for help and allow people to help you. This was a huge shift for me. I was always really good at taking care of others as a nurse, as a manager, but I wasn't good at receiving help. So it does go both ways. It's giving and it's receiving help. And I'll just share this next picture because this is what burnout can look like on the left. This was back in that time, as I said, I was simmering, I think. I think burnout was cooking and I just didn't know it. This was actually at a time when we were supposed to be celebrating the end of school year for my son. You might look at that picture and think, what's the big deal? But when I look at that picture, it does bring back a lot of the overwhelm, the anxiety, just feeling ill at ease, feeling very irritated and tired. That's what that represents for me. And then the photo on the right is years later, I guess more current day, more present day. And it was after a lot of the work that I had to do to recover from burnout. All the things that I just mentioned, those 10 tips in the previous slide. Yeah, it was just, those are some of the things that worked for me. And what works for you is going to be different again. There's no cookie cutter approach to recovering from burnout, to avoiding burnout. It's whatever strategy works best for you. Maybe deep breathing doesn't work for you. Maybe you need to try something else. There's so many different things that we can do. These are just 10 that I've shared and that have worked for other people and that are bound in research. So besides this kind of presentation and sharing lots of self-care strategies to promote our sustainability as a caregiver, how do I help my clients? And what is this whole Care Navigator business? I will tell you that back in 2016, 2015, 16, when I was going through the process of that deciding what now, I did a lot of research and there was no such thing. I wasn't finding a care navigator in any of my research. They called it different things, but this was just a term that I kind of coined back in 2016 when I was launching my practice. But a care navigator really can do a lot of different things. And in current day, navigation is actually almost a subspecialty of nursing, and it doesn't even have to be a nurse. I know people who do navigation that are social workers or just people with lived experience. So navigation is huge, it's growing, and I kind of wish I would have trademarked the term, but that's what I call myself, a care navigator. But it can be many things in many different organizations. And I'll just share a little bit how I structured it in my practice and how I help people. Because there are so many different opportunities and options now to navigate. But for myself and the families that I work with, sometimes if it's appropriate, we have coaching sessions or consultations. And consultation, caregiver consultation, is really just our time together. It's really focused on you and what your challenges are, what your questions are, what your struggles are, and what are the answers to all of that. It's a one-on-one session. It can now happen safely, again in person, or back during COVID times. Of course, I was doing them virtually, like the picture on the right, but now today in a post-COVID world, I continue to do them virtually, mostly because we get to include maybe your siblings or other family members that live further away. And that's always beneficial too. So caregiver consultations are one of my favorite things to do. There's never two the same, and I really enjoy helping families to problem solve. Roadmaps are another program that I offer if that's suitable for that particular family. Basically, roadmaps are just chock full of my professional recommendations for what would help you and your family member to be successful at home. Peace of Mind is another program that I offer, and it is a monthly visiting program. There's varying degrees of visiting. We have to determine how often I will visit your family member. But my Peace of Mind program was developed with long distance caregivers in mind. One thing about our demographic today is that many of us grew up, went to school, and then moved away. It's just that some of us moved back, but some of us didn't, but we stay connected to our community. And so in my Peace of Mind program, I would be visiting the family members of people who generally don't live in the area. They don't know what's available. They don't know what to ask for. And they've got a lot of concerns about mom and dad or aunt and uncle who live here in Fredericton. And I'm here in Fredericton. So that's a program that is near and dear to my heart, I guess, because I have a fondness for long distance caregivers. I just know how tough that it's got to be. And then in the last picture there along the bottom is really just to try to capture all of the other stuff that I get the opportunity to do. And I've been so grateful to be able to be asked to speak to groups like yourself and to share information. I've been asked to speak with different groups, seniors groups. I get to participate in some of the things that Michelle outlined. I do a lot of work in the death space, in the caregiver wellness space, and just most recently, I've got to participate in some really interesting research projects, and I just really love that. One of the things I really enjoy too is the virtual community that I host, and it is called the I Care community, and it is hosted on Facebook. And I will have the link, or you can just search the I Care community on Facebook. And it is a private group on Facebook that you have to ask to join. It's quite exclusive. We are all caregivers from all over the world. And it is a place just to come to be together, to strengthen our spirit, to get motivation, to share information, and just be together, as I say, in our journey, our caregiving journey. And it's a lot of fun too. I'll just leave you with some of these parting words before we go to questions. But it really is about taking care of yourself first, so that you can take care of others. And this is one of my favorites too, is that self-care is giving the world the best of you instead of what's left of you. And that's just my contact information. If anyone wants to find me, I don't think it's very hard. Thanks to Google these days, I think all of these things pop up. So I am active on Facebook and LinkedIn, and my email, my website, and of course my phone number.
Thank you so much, Karen. We'll leave that up just for a second in
Oh,
case
sure.
anyone wants to take down any of that information. But we did have a few questions that came just to the hosts and panelists, and I just wanted to let everybody that's joining us know that we are recording the session, and everyone joining us today will receive a link to the session afterwards. So if you missed anything that you wanted to listen to again, everyone will be receiving this session. So. All right, so maybe we'll get you to stop sharing your screen then, and we'll just do a little Q&A with you and I. Thank you so much for sharing that, Karen. So many of us either are or will be at some point caregivers, and I just think the work you're doing is really important. So thank you
Thank
for
you.
sharing with us. We had a few people submit questions when they registered, and so I'm wondering if we maybe can start going through some of those questions. There is one that I would love to also know the answer to. Someone's asking if there's one place to find sort of all or many resources for seniors.
hmm Um, there wasn't until recently. At the end of my presentation there, I had mentioned some of the research work that I've got to participate in. And one of those projects was the development of a navigation tool. And the project was led by a dear friend of mine and colleague, Dr. Michelle LaFrance at St. Thomas, but we won't judge
That's
her.
okay. That's okay.
She may be watching. I don't know if you are, Michelle. Hello. But I was grateful enough to be on that project with Michelle and a great team. And it was to develop what is called, I'll just make note of it, Aging in New Brunswick, a user's guide. Now, the user's guide was put out, but already it needs some revisions. So if you Google it, you may or may not find a link, but it's going to be re-released when it's revised. Already there are some things that need to be revised. So if you search that though, Aging in New Brunswick, a user's guide, that was really our effort to try to bring in like so many different things and what you have to do. The thing about resource guides too is that they're really only good for the day they're printed, because they change. Like some programs open, some programs close, some of them are offered, some never got past COVID. So it really is difficult to know always what's available in your community, but you have to be really immersed in your community, right? And you have to really try to dig deep to find what it is that your person needs. Because you could look at a guide like that and be almost a little overwhelmed by all the content. The key thing is, what does my person need and what's best for them?
So before I go on to the next question, I just want to mention, so Suzanne put in the comments, she just wanted to thank you and said that it was quite emotional listening to you and seeing yourself. And I was going to open by saying that when I said thank you, but then I thought I might tear up, so I didn't. But I did find it quite emotional just listening to you talk about the importance of self-care and that there is a community, and just knowing that there's so many people out there that are going through the same thing, I think is helpful. So thank you for that. And thank you, Suzanne, for putting in words in the chat. And Diane just put a link to a CBC News article around that guide to aging in New Brunswick, just for anybody who might be able to find it there.
Yeah, and like I say, just be patient because it is being revised. So if you follow that link in that article, which I think I tried it like in the lead up to this presentation, because I saw that question and that's the first thing that came to mind. And I think it might say like under revision or something, but check back, and I'll probably share it like in my social media when it is done. So it's just needing a few tweaks, updates already.
Great. So we have someone who's wondering about dealing with any tips you might have for dealing with resistance from the care recipient, but still allowing them to have their independence. And so, just day-to-day choices around meals and activities and things, and getting a little bit of resistance on that.
This is really common. I hear it all the time. And I don't always have the magic solution, right? Because you know your family person best. But a lot of times I'll challenge my clients and just ask them, have you had this conversation with your family member? Have you asked them how they see their long-term care? Have you asked them, what that looks like for them? Because I've always been a believer that we all are responsible to plan our long-term care. Not my sons. It's not up to them to know what I want when I'm 85 years old. It's up to me to decide what I want that to look like. And with their help, to honor that and to make that happen. But it really is about having probably some difficult conversations, talking about how we feel about support when we're older, or what does that look like for us, or when I'm old and gray and can't walk, I'm open to this, that, or the other thing. Those aren't the kinds of things that we're going to talk about at Easter dinner, right? We tend to talk about very superficial things, what's happening in the media, what's happening in the news. There's always lots to talk about, but we don't always talk about what we each expect or what we want. And so I just really encourage everybody to have those conversations with the people that they care and support, so that they can express what they want, and that you can work together with them to honor that and to try to make that happen.
Okay, I think that's helpful, and I think it leads nicely into the next question, which is from someone who recently became a caregiver for a friend. So it's not a family member; it's for a friend who's in their 80s, and again, having those conversations around this person not being able to do the things they used to do, and maybe being accepting of that despite being very stubborn. But also, they're looking for some strategies for how not to lose their temper as a caregiver when they're frustrated by the patient. So there's sort of two questions there.
Yeah, and because I have that question, because I saw that question too, I just, what caught me about that particular question was, and then at the end they said, oh, and maybe some things like self-care strategies. There was two that sort of, gave their situation, and then, and maybe some self-care strategies. And I thought, that is so typical that as a family caregiver, you're always thinking of your person first and yourself second. So I just thought it was so cute and so relevant and so typical that the people who had submitted those, it was kind of themselves was kind of an afterthought, right? About the other question about the person who has the friend who's not a relative, he's really concerned about him. He's coherent, but just stubborn. I just had this conversation yesterday with a caregiver. And I think one of the hardest things as a caregiver is to accept that our people will sometimes make bad decisions. And competent people reserve the right to make bad decisions. I'll just let that sit for a minute, because it might not be the decision we would make, right? Because I am me and you are you. So we're going to make a different decision on it. But someone who's competent, they reserve the right to live at risk, and they reserve the right to make their own decisions. Only does a power of attorney become in effect when they're deemed incapable or incompetent, right? So even though it might not be the decision that we make or what we think is best, sometimes we just have to accept their decision, control what you can, and let go of the rest. And a lot of people don't like to do that. I tend to want to err on the side of safety and plan and avoid a crisis too. But when your person is set on a certain decision and a certain path, and they're capable of making that decision, sometimes you just have to let it happen. And the cards will fall where they will, and we'll pick up the pieces then. But I know it's so hard because it goes against our grain of being prepared and trying to kind of get behind the 8 ball, right? About the losing patience part, that's probably where some of those 10 strategies would come into place. Sometimes you just have to physically remove yourself from the conversation. No apologies, no excuses, just, I need to leave the room for a few minutes. I've had to do that with some of my clients where it was just the level of frustration with what was playing out in front of me. And it's just a matter of maybe stepping outside, taking, 10 deep breaths, getting something to eat. Maybe I'm, dehydrated, getting renourished. It really does just mean leaving the situation, ending the phone call, not responding to the email right away, maybe just sitting on it for a little bit. But we can't always solve everything for our people. And sometimes it does get really frustrating. And it is easy to lose your patience because you're on your last nerve, right? The irritability level is very high. So this is why you have to be in your vessel, like yourself has to be its best self because when you're handling situations like that, it can be dicey.
Yeah. Such an important conversation that we're having right now, Karen. Thank you for being so generous with your time. There is a question from someone asking about planning financially for elderly couples that are preparing for one of them to be in a special care home and a nursing home. Are there any resources to help people plan for that, to know what to plan for and how to plan?
That will be in the aging, a guide, Aging in New Brunswick, a user's guide. That will be in the revised version. It was in the original version too, but it walks you through the steps there. That's kind of the unfortunate thing that navigation does have to exist, because government isn't always great about explaining how to access their programs. They're always good at like flashing something that's new and shiny and gets our attention. But I swear a lot of the work I do is explaining the process of how to navigate government and health systems. It's just unfortunate, right? Because it's just very overwhelming because people have never done this before. I always say this to caregivers, like, it's not that you're stupid. It's not that you don't know the answer. It's just you've never done this before. So how would you know, right? So if anyone wanted to Google social supports NB, it will bring up a lot of the long-term care programs. And I've actually been looking at it a little bit more. You can refer your person online now. There's an online referral. So if you look at social supports NB, I think it's .ca, it'll come up and it's actually quite nice. And you can look all through the long-term care section. But there is a financial qualifier. So if someone was looking for, maybe they're starting with in-home supports, which is usually where we start, then in New Brunswick, we feel that if you can afford to pay for that, then you will. So the government does a financial assessment first. And it's much more streamlined now because they actually have a consent form whereby you give your consent, and social development will get just the information they need from the CRA. So it takes away a lot of the legwork that people used to have to do with trying to find notice of assessments and income tax returns and stuff. So that's really made it more streamlined. So that's for in-home support. But if your person is more set to be placed in a care home, a special care home or a nursing home, same thing. Even if they're going to pay for everything themselves, they still want to be able to demonstrate that you have the financial ability to do that. Or what is it that you can contribute to your nursing home bed? Same financial assessment, same consent form, and it determines what you pay, and then the government would cover the rest of the cost. But it all does start with a referral to long-term care, as well as the financial assessment.
We're lucky to have navigators to help us through that, Karen.
I know. How would you know this stuff, right?
Right. Yeah. So similarly, but on a different topic, there is someone that's wondering about any recommendations you'd make around print or electronic resources for caregivers of dementia patients. And so they're looking for tips on how to help their person maintain a social life, but also when it comes to the point where communication will become problematic, just sort of tips for day-to-day living and communicating between the caregiver and the patient.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Um, this is, being a dementia caregiver, if you want to call it that, it is a unique one in itself. And the person who asked this question already knows that, because there's no cookie cutter approach, right? So what would work really well as a strategy, if you will, for one person might not work with another person. And so it's almost like you have your bag of tricks, that what engages your person, what keeps them occupied, what might distract them, because sometimes with dementia behaviors or Alzheimer behaviors, they need a lot of redirection. They need some diversion, some distraction. And what might work well for one person might not work for somebody else. Like music might work, movement might work. There's that movement again, right? Sometimes people just need to get up and get their body flowing and moving, and any of the agitation or upset that's in their body, like there's amazing things, the benefits of music therapy. You can YouTube it, it's called Alive Inside. And it shows people who have very end stage Alzheimer's and dementia in care homes, and they put headphones on them, and you see what their response is to the music. It's amazing. Grab a tissue before you watch it, though. So music is one, movement is one. I have a really good book that a friend and colleague of mine in British Columbia wrote. She was here pre-COVID, and we did a presentation together. Her name's Karen as well. I know it's probably backwards, but it's Karen Tyrell, and it's called Cracking the Dementia Code. If your person's here in Fredericton, she left a copy at the library for Fredericton and area residents. She actually signed mine. The thing about her book that I really like is it does address, like, this is happening and how can I react to that? So he's starting to wonder, what strategy can I put in place? Or, she's starting to repeat her question. How do I respond to that? One thing that I often tell families, and I'll share it here, is one of the nice things about when people are always reminiscing and they're thinking of a previous time or a previous home where they used to live. This is very common with someone with Alzheimer's or dementia, is we don't have to be the memory police anymore. It used to be years ago, best practice was to try to reorient people, always trying to bring them back to where they were, what day it is. And we have all those memory clocks and calendars, and people were driving themselves mad, always reorientating their people. But now best practice says, we don't have to do that anymore. You just kind of go there with them. So if your mom is suffering from Alzheimer's and she keeps saying, I want to go home, I want to go home, and this is common, then we say, where's home? And what color's the door? And who's inside? And who's going to be there? And what are we going to have for dinner? So it's just to kind of go there with them. And I think families that use that strategy, they end up finding out a lot of stuff they didn't know before. So it's all just, I think, must be lessening the load a little bit, because it's like, oh, I don't have to, I call it the memory police. I don't have to be the memory police anymore. I know it's still frustrating when people repeat and ask the same questions. I know that can be really hard and test your patience, but just kind of go there with them and see what they say. They might tell a little story. And some people have gotten into recording those stories so that they'll have them for when their person is not with them anymore.
Oh, that's really helpful. When you're talking about when you were talking about that, it coincided with Eric posting something in our chat just around the benefits of talk therapy, and so similar to what you were saying about journaling, just being able to just get it out and say it, and then move on. And any comments on that from you around a self-care strategy to be able to talk through things with someone?
Yeah, 100%. I think sometimes um, that's why caregiver consultations are, I believe, very helpful if that's the program that is best suited for that particular family, because there's not a lot of times when people ask how you're doing or how you're feeling. It always gets very focused on the person um, that you're caring for. And sometimes we forget about like who's supporting that and who's really making that happen. So um, yeah, I guess it's just why I do what I do, period, because I just feel like family caregivers deserve so much respect and reward and recognition for the really important work that they're doing, right? Like our system just would not be sustainable without it. So, um, yeah, it's so necessary to be able to share how you're feeling with somebody. And we do a lot of that in the eye care community too, where people can just pop in, or it's just a check in, like, how are you feeling today? Like, how's everyone holding on? Like, midweek check in, Wednesday, how's everyone getting through the week? Because sometimes, yeah, you just need to talk. It has to be with a trusted friend. And not all your friends, colleagues, or coworkers, they're not going to be able to relate to you because they're not going through it. So they're not at the caregiving table, I call it, not yet. So they might not be able to relate to what you're saying. But if you have a trusted friend that you can have conversation with, sometimes that's all they can be. And for those people who maybe are the primary caregiver, but their siblings live far away and the siblings don't know what they can do, sometimes being that sounding board for your sibling, that's all you can do. But that's huge because, yeah, talk therapy, if and that could be with a professional too. Some people have to seek professional counseling. This is hard and it's very emotional,
Yeah.
and it's right to the core of your first relationships, your parental relationships, your spousal relationships, and your kids. So yeah, very much professional talk therapy, counseling could be needed.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to believe, but we've come to our hour, Karen. Thank you so much for taking the time to share so generously with your alumni community. I've told you this before, but we're so proud to have you as part of our alumni family. So thank you for
Thank
taking
you.
the time to do this. I also wanted to thank all of our alumni for joining us today. As I mentioned, we've recorded the session, so the people that wanted to be here but couldn't, will share it widely after the session is over. And finally, I did want to acknowledge that all of our alumni programs, including our UNB Talks series, are made possible by a partnership that we have with TD Insurance and with Manulife through the association. So they offer discounted rates on lots of different insurance products for our alumni. So please check them out if you haven't already. And with that, I just wanted to say a great big thank you to everyone. I hope you have a wonderful day. And when we share this presentation afterwards, you'll be able to connect with Karen if you need to, and with any of the resources she's provided. So thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day.